So who has a 100-word summary of all the trouble you guys got into last week?
There was no trouble.
Is that so?
Everything was orderly, and
It was a very orderly egress last time. Yes.
nothing.
I love that title. That is an amazing title, Treble. My hat's off to you.
That was from Brick Road admitting that was probably the most disorderly exit from a dungeon that he had ever seen.
So we found out that the king is dead and has been dead for X number of time.
Connor did the job we were hired for.
Yeah.
So we hired him to make it seem like we are competent as a group, right?
I thought we hired him to spread the dead out 5 ways instead of 4.
We scouted talent and redistributed our financial burdens. Come on, people.
No, talent is
hired
the name
Connor.
of his Final Fantasy XI character.
We hired Connor because he wouldn't shut up about asking for a job. Like,
Oh, wait, we
Lucius
started
remembers
talent.
this. Lucius remembers this. Like, he would not shut up about looking for a job.
So some grifter rolled into Dunfoss and you guys brought him in. That's very generous of you.
I mean,
More like drifter, honestly, not grifter.
Drifter, grifter, potato.
Who says potato?
I will
I'll
fight
kill
them.
him.
Yeah.
I love eating mashed potatoes. What are you talking about?
Oh,
Mash and potato. So Connor stole out of the dungeon with the Silver Wolf, Maximilian Silverwolf's greatsword, which he brought. So the drow who was in there, who was trying to do the same thing you guys were doing, told him his dying wish before the palace guards descended on him: do not give this, and crowned the pirate king. And then Connor went and gave it to the man who was going to become the pirate king.
So
I have a little bit of a different recollection of that. That was,
Do you?
I believe he was begging to help Journey, put Journey on the throne.
Correct.
That's not don't put the pirate king on the throne.
He did tell you, do not seat the pirate king.
he said,
That was
"Don't give
It's
it
a
the
zero-sum
wrong thing."
game, man.
so
That's a different conversation.
so question. I have a question. So we've made an eternal enemy of a
Dead man.
dragon,
Mm-hmm.
a Rakshasa.
Yes.
Now do we have the angry shade of a drow also?
Oh, he's
like,
very
No,
dead.
he's dead. He's dead.
Also, if he has an angry shade, it's in the sewers.
It's- he's
So he's a toilet elf now.
extremely dead. Connor
there's
could
a
have saved his life and
You
chose
wouldn't
not.
even notice another angry shade.
Let's be
Connor
honest.
could not have.
Aren't,
Actually, probably he could have.
aren't drow kind of toilet elves to begin with?
Depends on who you ask and what kind of campaign you're playing.
Chris.
So you guys relinquish the sword to Sigurd Ten Sails, and Sigurd paid you a stipend for your fallen man who died in his service. Gave him the same consideration that he would have given to any family of a fallen crew member at sea. Let me do some math here for a second. So who is in Dunfoss? This would have been probably 20 or 30 years ago. The last time a king was selected from the Court of Commons. Nobody here? Okay.
I think Alex is only 36-ish.
You would have had to have been pretty young, I think.
So, I mean, I don't think he was living in Dunfoss at the time.
So there are,
Nor socials.
just a quick refresher, there are 5 courts in the government of Dunfoss, from which the king is selected when the previous king either dies or is forced out of office through other means. 4 of these courts have actual rules that they follow to determine how they select who's going to be the king from their court, who will essentially represent their court when they take control of Dunfoss for the duration of that king's reign. So for the past 12 years, the Court of Commerce has had this seat, and they're about to lose it to the Court of Commons. The previous 2 kings, chosen from the Court of the Gods and then the Court of Arts, meaning magical arts, really kind of pooped the bed. They were only on the throne for less than a year each. The previous actually good king that anybody remembers was the last one chosen from the Court of Lords. Those 4 courts all have their own rules, their own methods of deciding who gets to sit in the big chair. The Court of Commons has no such rules in place. So it's probably going to be a tumultuous week, to say the least. The general idea is that in the Palace District, there will be an open forum presided over by the current chairwoman of the Court of Commons, Joni Fletcher. This is a position that's put in place by the king. They kind of work as a liaison between the common man and the throne. And traditionally, this is the person that has like the most chance of being selected through the Court of Commons. The problem with this position is that when you're elevated to a position like that, you're kind of by definition no longer one of the commons. And this is certainly the case with Joni Fletcher, who served with King Juliana for many years, and then through the reign of 2 loser kings, and then for 12 years under Maximilian Silverwolf. She's had this cushy job for 2 generations now. And she's a half-elf, so she can, as far as anybody knows, she'll just hold it until either she dies or until a king removes her. Her job during this is going to be to preside over this open forum where, in theory, every man in Dunfoss can come in and have a voice and make his case on why he should be selected amongst the commons to be the next king. In actual practice, you can't fit thousands and thousands and thousands of people inside this room. So little unofficial forums kind of open up all over the city, in bars, in tap houses, and back rooms, spilling out into the streets, across the harbors, on the decks of ships, sometimes coming to violence, and the winners of those little forums tend to move on. People are factioning off, creating blocks and whatnot, and this is highly manipulable by the other 4 courts. For example, if you are in the Court of Commerce and you have a large block of common people who work for you, it's very easy to get them to select you to represent them, and then you go make your case why you should sit in the throne. So it's actually very, very rare for a real commoner to get chosen as king. The frontrunner chosen by Flumph Inc. is Sigurd Tensails, who was a wealthy privateer in the service of Juliana I, who turned into a pirate, essentially, after she died, and his services were no longer needed by the city, who has recently sailed back into town, ostentatiously, and promising everybody great wealth and riches if he's selected. Sigurd Tensails is by no means a common man. So the first question is, how much influence, if any, do you guys either individually or as Flumph Inc. as a group intend to have over this essentially free-for-all? Are you going to get involved at all, or are you keeping it at arm's length? Do any of you want to throw your hat into the ring and make a case?
I mean, I think Alex is technically nobility. And a foreigner.
Well,
Yeah, Lucius.
Maximilian was also a foreigner. That doesn't disqualify you. Journey
Lucius
is
wants
as well.
wants to be nowhere near this because he doesn't want He basically would unless his father gives him some kind of instruction to do such a thing, then Lucius wants to stay and wants to have no part in it.
Okay.
Because he doesn't want to. He still sees his family as kind of an outsider to Dunfos.
Alex wants to make sure it's publicly known that he personally supports 10 sales, but he's not going to go out of his way to like go to these forums and argue for him. He just wants to make sure that if you asked, anyone who actually researched it would find out that Alex did, because that way if 10 sales researches it, he finds out that Alex did.
Okay.
So
And
there's
as
secret-
far as anybody else knows, 10 Sales has already made it known that he has the support of Flumph Inc. for whatever that's worth. He has been loudly proclaiming that, actually for quite some time, since you guys saved his life on the dock. And Gus and Seeker and Connor are staying out of it as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Seeker's not a charismatic person.
That's true. So the first thing that happens, on the morning of the 10th, so 2 days after you deliver the sword to 10 Sales, he makes a public march into the palace district with all of his entourage and many hundreds of hangers-on, people that have come to rely on him and his business and his promises since he's been in Dunfos these past few months. At this point, he's made it known throughout every corner of the city that he can prove that Maximilian is dead and that he intends to do it on the steps of the palace. Are any of you in the palace district at all, or are you going to hear what happens secondhand?
Alex is
Seeker
going
would
to
show up.
spend one day going into the palace district again, just to make it clear publicly that he supports 10 sales.
Are you marching with him?
No, that's a little bit more than I need.
Okay.
Lucius will be present, but not marching with him.
Okay.
I'll show up and march with him. I don't have to do any talking for that.
So Seeker, you're there with him, yes?
Yeah.
What about Connor and Gus?
Gus
Connor.
is. Go ahead.
Connor will stay alongside Alexander.
Okay.
Gus is going to go get just spend the entire week getting drunk every day. Probably not even coming back to the barge.
Spending these next 2 days doing a lot of heavy drinking, you find yourself constantly embroiled in political debate. Because after the first day, news is starting to spread that 10 Sales can prove King Maximilian is dead, which immediately sets to word on everybody's tongue that the next king is about to be chosen, and it's the Court of Commons, and that means it's the topic of conversation in every tap house across the city. So, Seeker, you have the best point of view here because you are alongside 10 Sales and his entourage. His entourage consists of a lot of the officers from his crew, but also no small number of influential people that he's made contact with in Dunfos and has done business with since he's been here. He's going to make a bid for being king selected from the Court of Commons, but a lot of his contacts are among the nobility or merchant classes.
Mhm.
And he has a
I
lot
spend
of
my
their
time-
support.
I spend my time talking them up, introducing myself,
Okay.
handing out business cards.
This is as nicely dressed as you've ever seen in Sales. By which I mean it's the first time you've seen him not dressed like he's standing on the deck of a ship. He's wearing finery, but not in very vivid colors. He prefers very stark whites and blacks. And he has a heavy cloak on his back, and you can see that he has a sigil on his... It's a black field with a white sigil of 10 billowing sails over a ship. a little on the nose. But it's apparently what he's chosen to take for his heraldry.
Seeker notes that,
Mhm.
and then I am going to ask him. Wait, does that mean we can have heraldry now?
You're not able to ask him anything. There's far too much commotion going on as his crowd is coming together. Because remember, he's actually staying in the harbor here. You guys are marching through town, coming up through the palace district.
Anyone else wearing any heraldry?
Some of his higher officers have similar cloaks with similarly ridiculous heraldry on it that they've clearly had commissioned since they've been in town, realizing that possibly they're going to get a high appointment by the king.
All right, I'm going to cast Creation.
Okay.
And I'm going to create a cloak similar to Ten Sails in similar colors that has a lantern with a seeing eye with light radiating out from it. I'm going to put it on my back.
Gross. Okay. So, Seeker, you're the first one to notice that Ten Sails has this large, heavy bundle bound in a sail and tied with rope. And you know what's inside because you've seen this greatsword before. And he's carrying it in his arms, and he's marching at the head of this line. Around him are his high officers, his main entourage. Immediately behind them would be all of his secondary contacts, including you, and then just gobs of Ten Sail supporters behind them, numbering in the hundreds. So those of you who are witnessing the spectacle but not marching along with, there are crowds in and around the palace district. How close to the palace are you guys while the march is underway?
I think I'm going to hang out in the North Gates district and just watch as they go by.
Okay. And Connor, you're with Alex?
Yes.
What about Lucius? Are you with him as well?
Yeah, I'm with them as well.
Okay. So, Seeker. Well, the rest of you watch this large entourage go by as they come through the North Gates district, up into the Palace district, and across the Great Bridge. Seeker, when you're able to see this crowd of people parting as Ten Sails crosses the bridge, you can see all of the silver shields are out in front of the palace. The silver shields were Maximilian's house guard. And standing there in full plate armor, wielding a great sword of her own, is Maximilian's sister, who is an NPC I swear has a name, but I cannot find it in any of my notes, and I have scoured all of them. And I can't find it.
Maximilian.
Maximilian of one.
I'm just taking one last look down here. No, okay.
Justine.
Here it is. I found it. I finally found it. It's not in the right document. That's the problem here.
Nice.
Her name is Froino.
Alright.
That's the name I came up with a year ago and haven't had cause to use. One of you actually met her once. She's the one who's in charge of the Dunfoss Mint. Traditionally, that's the Silver Wolf business in Dunfoss. They have mining interests, they bring the metal here, and they mint Dunfoss coins. So you've seen this woman before. Probably usually in formal dress at a great distance, but one or two of you, I think it was Seeker, because you had coins that you took to her.
Uh-huh.
Okay. You've never seen her like this. She's in full battle regalia, wearing the king's colors, and she has a great sword. It looks similar to the one that you know that Ten Sails is carrying. And they're all standing here set to receive Ten Sails and his entourage as he approaches. Ten Sails cries out in a billowing voice, more directed to the crowds and everyone else than Froino and the silver shield standing in front of the palace. And he calls out that the king is dead, and I can prove it. He died some time ago. The palace has been covering up his death because they do not want the people of Dunfoss to select a new king, as is their lawful right. Seeker, what's your passive insight?
My passive insight is 13.
Okay. Who are you watching?
Probably Fryno.
Okay. Then you can see her bristle at the comment. And Tensale steps forward, and only 2 or 3 of his most trusted men step forward with him. None of the silver shields move at all. And he holds out this bundle that he has wrapped in a sail. And he says, under cover of darkness, did I have to retrieve this object from the catacombs beneath the palace. This was a grievous violation of trust of Dunfosset laws, I'm sure you'll agree. And I am sorrowful that the dismal actions of Half Silverwolf had forced me to it. And he hands the bundle forward. Froyno takes it gingerly. And Tensales announces, "That's your brother's sword, is it not?" And without even opening the bundle, and she's looking straight ahead, not making eye contact with him, just straight through him. Without even opening it, she says, "It is." "And you will confirm that my men took this from your dungeons beneath the palace, where your brother's body is hidden?" And she doesn't respond. There's a lot of murmuring throughout the crowd. You guys way back in Northgates can't hear any of this conversation, even though it's being shouted. There's just way too much noise.
Right.
Eventually, when she doesn't respond, Tensale says, "If the king lives, produce him. Name me a liar, and I will sail away today. If you cannot, I demand you produce his body so that Dunfoss can bury its king and select its next one." And there is riotous cheering and agreement. Some of it very, very angry. Would Seeker know what a riot is before one breaks out? Like, would he have the presence of mind to see when a powder keg is about to go off?
Oh, absolutely. Because that's usually when Seeker decides to leave.
Seeker, this might be a good time for you to decide to leave. Because it's at this point that you notice an awful lot of people seem to have brought weapons along with them, concealed on their person. Knives, battered swords. You see old men with walking sticks suddenly less leaning on them and more brandishing them in front of them. And it becomes apparent to you that this mob, with or without the goading of Tensales, may very well storm the palace if they don't get what they want. And you're in between them and the palace currently.
Well, I've got this very nice cloak.
How long does a creation spell last?
So it's a fabricate, actually. Fabricate, not
Okay.
creation.
Vladislav is next to you. He dispels it and then laughs at your dumbass and runs off.
Oh, that asshole.
Fabricate, I think, is instantaneous.
Yeah.
It just turns a pile of hemp into a cloak.
Drat,
Right.
foiled again. Are you doing
Yeah,
anything in this moment?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm Seeker's thinking very quickly if there's something he can do to stop this riot.
Well, it's really going to depend on what Silverwolf does next.
Yeah.
She addresses the crowd now. She calls out, "Good people of Dunfoss, my brother's loyal subjects these past 12 years. Our city is at war with an enemy the likes of us, many of us, cannot contemplate. Our sons and our fathers and our brothers are fighting every day for the safety of my brothers and my father's holds and the safety of Dunfoss and all of the lands to the south. And then she starts going into, essentially her argument is that now is not the time to put Dunfoss through political turmoil and effectively endanger the war effort. A change in power would put a lot of that into turmoil. And she goes into detail about this kind of thing. She uses supporting evidence from wars long past, even in the regimented military of the dwarven kings of old. When one king died and his son took the mantle, the change in power caused ripples. But at no point during the whole thing, you realize, Seeker, does she ever actually say that her brother's alive. And the people around you are growing more and more impatient by the moment. You guys back in Northgates, there are runners coming up and down the bridge constantly. So there, every so often, a boy will come up to, say, the stairs here and call out to the crowd the latest on what's been said. So this is how you guys are learning what's happening a minute or two after it happens up the road. So you'll hear the riotous cheer from down around the palace. And then 60 seconds later, a boy will show up and call out and tell everybody why. So you guys are aware that Ten Sails has presented the sword, and that Silver Wolf is now explaining why Dunfoss should not currently select a new king. And now you guys are starting to hear murmurs around your area, some of which are very angry indeed. Gus, were you getting drunk today?
Probably several different pubs. Like, basically, he would stay in a pub. Probably he would have went to a wharf town first, and then when people were bothering him, he would have got up and left.
Okay.
So probably somewhere. He's probably somewhere in here. Like, they're in the Great. Are they in? Where are they? Is this happening? This is the Palace District, right?
So everything's going down right in front of the palace. The rest of the party is back here in Northgate. So there are runners going up and down along the bridge, calling out to the crowds what's happening. If you're drinking anywhere else in town, it's rather empty because...
Well, no, I think I probably would have... I mean, like, I'm pretty sure, like, the bars, are they going to even be open? Like, I'm pretty sure the barkeeps would have, closed up. They wouldn't stay open for just me, would they? Is there a bar in Northgate I can drink in?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, I'm in Northgate drinking.
Okay. Then you were also,
like,
every so often, a boy pokes his head in the door and calls out what's going on at the palace. Ten Sails thanks Forno Silverwolf for her lesson on dwarvish history. And then he just reiterates his demand. No. The citizens of Dunfoss demand that you produce the king or his body. So once again, murmurs of agreement. Froino passes the bundle in her arms back to one of the silver shields, who takes it up in this very regimented manner. And he immediately turns and moves back inside the palace. She tells Ten Sails that the crown... She tells Ten Sails that the people are not in any position to make demands of the crown.
Oof.
And in any event, she thanks him for returning her brother's sword. And then row by row, starting with the back behind her, the silver shields start moving back into the palace. And over the course of the next minute or so, they're executing this military maneuver. The sword disappears inside, rows of silver shields. And only once the row behind her starts moving does Silverwolf take up her own great sword and turn behind them and follow them in. And you and 100,000 angry Dunfossens and Sigurd Ten Sails and basically everybody but Gus watch as she goes inside the palace with the sword. The palace doors close.
I am going to head to East Harbor to the Keyskin Embassy.
Okay.
I'll let the others know where I'm going, but where I'm going.
Seeker.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan to get out of the middle of this crowd in the next few minutes?
I'm actually going to, I think, try to push a bit closer to Ten Sails because it seems safer there.
Not for long, because very quickly the crowd starts shouting responses at the palace, just echoing what Ten Sails says. And he stands, you can only see the back of his head, but you can imagine the smirk on the other side of his face.
Right.
As this crowd starts pushing past him and his entourage around the palace, angrily shouting up. And looking up at the upper floors of the palace, you see the windows that had been open close one at a time as the servants inside bring them shut. And Ten Sails just allows this crowd to rush forward. Some of them getting as close as the bottom of the palace steps, throwing rocks and debris and things. And it's going to get pretty beefy. You're going to try to get up to Ten Sails?
Yeah.
Okay. When you go to approach him personally, one of his entourage, one of his burly pirate buddies that you've seen here and there, begins to kind of brusquely step in between you. But when he sees it's you, he steps aside.
Yeah.
Connor turns to Alex and says, I do believe we've started a civil war.
I think the king's sister probably started a civil war.
Mm.
Though I don't disagree with you.
If only you'd done what the drought told you to do. Seeker.
No, I think there's going to be buckets of blood spilled over this. That's absolutely something we should try and avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas?
Ten Sails becomes, as soon as he becomes aware of your presence, without even turning his head, he's just staring at the palace, and he does indeed have a smirk on his face. And he says, Seeker.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to behold. The will of the masses. And he crosses his arms and stands there and watches.
What do you think her plan is? She has to know this can't last.
He says, well, I wonder how many years it's been since the Palace of Dunfoss came under direct cannon fire from its own harbor. And he looks down at you, turns his head away from the palace for the first time. He says, it's good to know you've got my back if it comes to that.
Oh, I'll be keeping real close. Should we send some messages to some of your, and Seeker looks around at the nobility gathered around Companion's house in the north, let them know what's going on?
He says, I believe for the time being, I will retire to my host's manor. Let events play out here as they may. I do have letters to draft. And he turns and addresses some of the crowd. Much of the crowd has pushed past him by now in and around the palace proper. And more people are coming up the stairs behind you onto the bridge. The crowd parts for him as he and his entourage begin moving back across the bridge. Are you going with him?
Yeah.
Okay. And as he's moving, he's given this speech about just reiterating everything that he just said. He provided proof that the king is dead. The palace refused to do it. And he actually shows some aptitude for Dunfossan history, as he points out that it's been hundreds and hundreds of years since one of the 5 courts attempted to stop one of the other 5 from its lawful selection of king.
All
This
right,
might be-
so Alex pulls his gun off his back, fumbles through his pack, pulls out a lead bullet with white runes on it, loads it in, whispers a few words to the gun, and fires it directly into the air, in which case the words appear above the palace, because it says sight, as a distance, in cloud, saying, "Starve out the traitor queen, do not whet their axes."
Holy shit.
Planned that.
So,
That's
For
a
the
lot.
next hour, those words are going to hang in the sky above the palace.
what spell is this?
Skywrite.
Okay. So, Seeker.
Yeah.
This might be the first time you've seen Ten Sails actually display any real political acumen, as he's addressing the people directly, and especially the nobles and merchantmen that he's brought with him, who are all in rapt agreement. And as it happens, mid-sentence, one of the men points up behind him in the sky. "Look at that!" And Ten Sails turns around, and he smiles brightly as he sees written across the sky in magical letters, "Starve out the traitor queen. Do not whet their axes."
And Seeker, you'll immediately recognize Alex's handwriting.
Seeker makes a little fist bump.
And Ten Sails simply says, "Wheels are turning now." And the crowd parts for him, but the crowd does not disperse. Not here in the Palace District. Down where you guys are in Northgates, the crowd, over the next hour or so, does start to disperse. Great numbers of people are very loudly chanting and protesting outside the palace. There are reports of violence here and there, but so far they haven't breached their way in, and there doesn't seem to be any real leadership or effort yet, at least not in the first couple of hours. Seeker, is it your intent to go back to the manor with Ten Sails?
At least for the start, just to see what his plan is over the next hours. But then I have some other stuff that I want to accomplish.
He seems pretty cagey about what his plan is. He's imparted to you that the people of Dunfos do love him enough that he could just turn his ship and fire cannons over into the palace if he wanted to. If he had to take the palace by force, he's prepared to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But watching how this played out, how he stoked this huge crowd and kind of let them loose and didn't, like, he's poking the fire. He's not trying to douse it. You're starting to wonder if he wants to fire cannons on the palace. But he's pretty cagey about what his immediate plans are. He tells you he's going to let this situation play out for the rest of the day. And we'll see what the reports of tomorrow bring.
Sure.
When Connor sees the skywriting,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't say anything, but just looks at Alexander.
I mean, what? Did you want a riot?
Can't say that I did, no.
I don't want commoners going up against the silver wolves.
The rest of the city, here near to the Palace District, the crowd is very much Ten Sails, but the rest of the city is not necessarily in agreement. Remember, Maximilian was a very beloved king. By all accounts, he was just and wise, and he did good work for the city, and very recently there was widespread support for fighting this war in the north, And many of the people in the city, practically every Dunfossen household, has family that has marched off to war, including this ridiculous detective barge in the Shallows.
Yep.
This is our long con to get Kevin back.
So a lot of people do not believe, at least not yet, that the king is dead. This pirate king has obviously produced some sort of false evidence. They hear that there was some kind of magical writing in the sky that is influencing people, asking them to break the doors down and bring out the head of the king and his sister. Lots of rumors kicking up.
I mean, unless it's particularly cloudy, you can probably see that through most of the city.
Only for the next hour, though. Everybody who didn't see it in the first hour is going to get the information secondhand, and everybody who gets the information secondhand is going to hear something different.
Before I leave, I'll tell Ten Sails that when we were in the palace crypts, I had the opportunity to find the opinions of some of the Silver Wolves, and I think that if he was to put out a show of support for continuing the war in the north, that both the city seems in support of that, and also he might be able to get some of the Silver Wolves to abandon the Queen, because they didn't seem too keen on being illegally in the palace once they found out the king was dead.
Hey, Destil, Skyrite is concentration for up to 24 hours.
Oh, up to 24 hours.
That's a number of hours.
Are you going to concentrate up for that amount of time?
Mine says 1 hour in the digital in the DDO.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
What does it say in the book?
I'll look it up. Oop, that's the wrong.
I mean, I'll concentrate as long as the spell lasts, but I do need to sleep.
Okay, hold on. Let me double check. 'Cause...
Yeah, it says up to 1 hour.
Up to 1 hour. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
up to 1
Sorry,
hour.
my bad.
All right, so after this whole debacle, after the sword is presented, Seeker, you're going, Lucius is going to the Keyskin Embassy.
Yes.
What is everybody else doing with their afternoon? This took place late in the morning.
Do you want like our plans for downtime actions for this week, or?
Let's get through this day first.
Okay.
Unless you're going to spend this afternoon during your downtime action.
Yeah, I might. So there's two things I was thinking of for downtime actions. Let me ask you, did I ever get anywhere where I can finish making this bag of holding I've done the research and prep work for?
Yeah, as long as you meet the requirements for making the bag, and you...
Yeah, I've done both of those. I still haven't done the last piece where I actually have to do something according to the DM.
Okay. I'll say that the backing of basically any of the magic colleges in Dunfoss, including Yalari. So it basically just means taking a trip to Yalari and getting the last resources you need. Now that you know exactly what to get your hands on.
I'll spend my afternoon at Yalari trying to pay off all those Face Circle locations I gave them to get the materials to finish this bag of holding then.
Okay. And what is Seeker doing this afternoon?
I'd actually like to go learn a few spells. 2 from Caitlin Chubb.
Okay. And what is Drunk Gus doing this afternoon?
Well, I've got to replace my shield because I left it down in the catacombs.
Don't worry about that. Just give me a list of all the equipment we need.
But I was going to see if I couldn't get a +1 shield.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
just wondering, like, I need a magic shield.
No, you can't buy a magic shield.
Dang it.
It's not a thing you can buy.
Well, okay, that doesn't matter. If it's the thing I can buy, Drunk Gus wants a magic shield.
Okay.
So Drunk Gus is going to go around the city looking for a magic shield.
Okay, accomplishing nothing. And what is Connor
Accomplishing
doing
nothing.
this afternoon?
Connor wants to shadow Lucius.
Okay. So, Lucius, you fill in, Connor, what the purpose of the embassy is and what your family's ties to it are? Is that... Or are we
Yeah.
leaving him in the dark? Okay.
Yeah.
The embassy's door is closed and locked when you arrive. You know the place isn't empty. Hold on here. Let me... I should have on my calendar here when the ambassador was set to arrive, but I don't see it here. I've got so much just dumb stuff on this calendar.
I do realize that it's been a while since I've addressed this particular thing for Lucius, but it's we've been busy. Haven't really had a chance to follow up on this.
Bear with me just 1 second.
Yep.
Okay, no. By this point, the ambassador would have arrived, and you had installed a man in his office.
Yes.
Who is loyal to you. You've been paying him. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let me get... So the ambassador's name is Cow.
Okay.
I have this note here. I wasn't sure if Lucius had learned it. I think you had. But he has addiction to a drug called serpent extract.
Yes.
Okay.
I do remember that.
So is this the first time... You would have been out of town the day he arrived. This is the first time you're coming to call. So...
Yes.
The embassy, the business office of it, is situated in a small building in East Harbor. There aren't living quarters inside for the ambassador's family. They must have a manor somewhere else in the city. But you know that the embassy could not be empty.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a very tumultuous day right now.
Yeah.
If you knock on the door and make your presence known, it's likely that they would let you inside.
Yeah, and I'll do that.
Okay. And an elderly Keeskin man opens the slat on the door, takes your affirms your identity, opens the door, and tells you that officially Kiska is taking no position in Dunfoss's transition of power. Which sounds smart to you, but you read a lot of fear in the man's voice when he says that. So you guys are led into the embassy, which has now been properly furnished and decorated in Keeskin style. So it would look very, very elaborate and foreign to Connor's eyes. Connor, I'm assuming, has never been to Kiska or thought much about it.
Nope.
Okay. And what do you tell him your business is, Lucius?
My business is basically, given all the news that's just come out in the last day, I was wondering, I wanted to know what the ambassador's thoughts were, and also to basically kind of make myself known here because I was busy and life got in the way. I wasn't able to be here for his installation. And I'd like to know how that went down actually. Like who from the palace, who from the palace welcomed you when you arrived? That's what Lucius wants to know.
Well, nobody welcomed this old guy.
I was trying to get the word from the ambassador himself.
Okay. The old man opens his mouth and begins to answer, but the voice that you hear is that of a young woman coming down the stairs around a corner behind him. And she says, Dunfoss ought to select its king the way Kiska selects its Jarl. Blood and fire. The woman who walks down the stairs is... Like, the description is going to be lost on my two gay players, but okay. The most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life. Dressed in Kiskin attire, which is...
I've never seen a woman before, you're right. It's... Oof. What could this be?
You know what one is, right? Wearing very exotic clothing. And fairly scantily dressed as well. Even though we're going into the Dunfossin winter here. Which, I mean, Dunfossin autumn would be cold by Keyskin standards.
Mm-hmm.
She's bronze
Lucius.
skin and very, very dark hair that's braided down her back. And you see at her sides, on each side, she has not properly sheathed, but just in a loop of her pants, a talwar, which is a kind of curved Keyskin sword, not often used in and around Dunfoss.
Lucius will bow courtly. Say, I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage, madam.
The old man makes introductions and introduces Mato, the ambassador's daughter.
I am Lucius Udoc. Pleased to make your acquaintance.
Udoc is a Keyskin name.
My father owns land out to the east.
Are you related by blood or marriage to the Warlock Queen?
Distantly.
And she makes a noise out of the side of her mouth that sounds disappointed. She tells you that the king did not meet her father in person when they arrived. And in fact, their arrival was made to very little fanfare. You can tell that her time in Dunfoss has been profoundly disappointing. She probably expected them to roll out cloth of gold carpets and have a big parade, and the king would make a great showing of gifts or labor, and none of that has happened. They kind of just showed up, got to business. They're shown to their manor which they live in, and she seems very unacquainted with the whole process and very disapproving of it. And she tells you, or she asks you rather, she says, my father's old fools have told me I must stay indoors, for there might be violence in the streets.
Lucius nods. It's a very real possibility.
As though I could not handle a little violence.
I'm not saying you couldn't handle a little violence. I'm just merely saying that it's a matter of safety.
Is it true what they say? Words hang in the air over the palace, calling for the heads of the king and his sister.
Not as such. I don't know how much of the city's rumors you've been privy to, but it's been rumored for some time now that the king is dead, and apparently the pirate Sigurd Tensails has produced evidence.
And you support this pirate king.
Only in my capacity as a member of my organization.
Why does he not?
Personally, I do not.
Why does he not take the palace by force? Bring the head of the king and his sister down to the people, if that is what they are clamoring for.
Given his style, that may not be far off.
Connor, what's your reaction to this conversation?
Well, when Lucius says that he doesn't support the Pirate King, but only does so because of Flumph, Connor very visibly raises an eyebrow and turns his head.
Who is your pretty friend?
My name is Connor, junior associate, Flumph.
And you are Lucius Udok's man?
Well, I wouldn't say man.
Do you serve
We've
him?
known each other.
Do you rub his soft feet?
He hasn't even taken me to dinner yet. Huh.
I find your whole city soft. She crosses her arms over her chest, disapproving.
Oh, I assure you, I find Dunvoss very, very unsatisfactory as well.
Connor, do you know that your employer was once a great family with great wealth and magic? The blood was very thick with them. And now, she motions to Lucius, soft, like Dunvoss.
And Connor thinks for a moment. Oh, that's the Ponce guy everyone keeps telling me about, huh?
Lucius waves a hand dismissively. No, that's our client, not my father. My father's family.
She asks you what business you brought for her father today. And she seems very dutiful, but also making no secret that she completely disapproves of doing this kind of just rote, routine busy work on her father's behalf. He's not in the embassy today. And Lucius, what's your passive insight? What's Connor's too, by the way?
Connor's passive insight.
Go ahead.
17.
17.
Better
Lucius,
than mine. Mine is a 9.
Lucius, add 5 because you know stuff about the
14.
ambassador. Did you share with Connor this tidbit you happen to know that the ambassador has this physical drug addiction?
It hadn't come up yet in conversation.
And Connor, you definitely can tell that, like, she's here doing the ambassador's job during this, what might bubble over into a riot. She's definitely covering for him in some capacity, and you can't figure out why. Lucius, you're a little slower on the uptake, but if Connor later points this out to you, you will immediately know the reason why.
Yeah.
What race is she? I miss what race she was. Is she a tiefling as well?
No, the ambassador is human.
Okay.
Connor.
Yes.
Actually, I'll tell you what. Lucius, give me an Arcana. Actually, you didn't ask me anything about it. Connor, give me an Arcana check at disadvantage.
Arcana check at disadvantage. Yeah, that is a 14.
A 14?
Yeah.
The ambassador to Kiska is a human. It's predominantly a human civilization. So is Dunfoss, for that matter. But you imagine they have a similar mix of races across the ocean as they do in Dunfoss. They've got their share of tieflings and dwarves and gnomes and whatnot. And you're given to understand that they also have a larger than normal population of elves. This woman is human, but... And one of the reasons that stands out to you is because Connor is also a human, but... And that's as far as you get.
I had intended to come sooner but my work for Flumph Inc. has been very demanding of my time, and I came to express my regret at missing such an important social call.
She tells you that you needn't worry, that her father did not even notice your absence. If he has any need of the knowledge of what sort of ink one gets from a Flumph, I will be sure to send a runner.
Lucius smiles a little bit, nods. If that's what you need, but do not hesitate to call on me if you need anything.
Her name is Mato? You said?
Mato.
Mato.
And at this, she tells the old seneschal that she'll be returning to her chambers, and to let her know if any actual rioting starts, or if anybody interesting shows up. She casts a disapproving glance back at Lucius before vanishing back upstairs. Lucius.
Yes.
The man you're paying in the embassy, you've been keeping up with his payments, yes?
Yes.
He's still loyal to you. So what sort of information are you looking to glean out of him while you're here, if anything?
Like, who is this Yuan Cow, and why would she be so upset with me for not apparently being related to the Witch Queen?
Yuan Cow is the ambassador.
Yeah.
Okay. His daughter Mato is the one who asked you if you were. Mm-hmm. So your understanding of Nanith Udoc is that she got into some really hardcore Warlock stuff, and a lot of people died, and there was a big cults involved, and blood rituals, and lots of really nasty stuff. And then nobody really knows what happens to them. Your family has always been very cagey on the details. I guess you probably just always assume that she was killed eventually.
Yeah.
So it's kind of surprising that anybody would be disappointed to learn that the modern Udocs are nothing like the Warlock Queen. Like, you would consider that to be a good thing. It's a good thing that we're not involved in blood rituals and cults and whatnot.
Yeah. I'll have to keep an eye on our new friend Bato.
Do you have any instructions with your mole to that extent?
Let me know if she's moving in and out of their compound.
Her father insists that she goes nowhere in the city without her handlers. Her handlers are two Keyskin soldiers that came across the ocean to serve his house. And apparently she has made great efforts to ditch them on many occasions, but is not usually successful. As for like her whereabouts in town, she likes the high scale districts. She likes spending her father's money. She likes the looks and stares of Dunfoss as she walks the streets as this very exotic visage. But you don't get any information on anything she's done that might be untoward or secretive. But your mole will redouble his efforts in that direction if that's your request.
Yep. Yeah. Let me know if she succeeds in evading her attendants.
Connor, anything else we'd like to do at the Keyskin Embassy?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Seeker, you're going to Caitlin Chubb to scribe some spells?
Uh-huh.
Caitlin is 100% against this Pirate King idea. This is foolhardy. The crown has excellent reasons for keeping the king under careful guard if he is sick. And if he's dead, they're doing the right thing by covering that up in order to not sabotage the ongoing war effort. Also, she would not trust the common men of Dunfos to select a competent pig handler, let alone a king. She gives you an earful when you show up to her shop. She was not out and about joining the crowds this morning.
I ask her how long she thinks that they could keep up the ruse that the king was living. And surely it would be more damaging for them to find out that the king was dead during some battle going on in the north. Can't help the army's morale to learn that they're there by false pretenses.
As for how long they could keep up the... I mean, they could have kept the king's body indefinitely. And she tells you that she doesn't believe the king is dead because, well, she's a spellcaster, and she knows what spellcasters are capable of. There's no reason for the king of Dunfos to die if he's surrounded by the highest level magicians in the city. Somebody can keep him alive. He has the capacity to cure any illness, to heal any injury. If he's dead, it's because... The only reason is because he didn't want to stay. Which doesn't make any sense to her. He had obligation as king, and he would not have shirked that responsibility. Remember, she's very much a crown loyalist.
I ask her what could have prevented the king from staying if he wanted to.
That's where you kind of hit the blinds a little bit. Actually, maybe not. Hold on a second. I have a note somewhere that says what level spellcaster she is and in what class. Is Raised Dead on the wizard spell list?
It is now. Oh, wait, no, not Raised Dead. Speak with Dead is. Sorry.
Okay, so because Raised Dead's not on the wizard spell list, as a wizard, she wouldn't have very clear knowledge on what might cause the spell to fail. That's more the purview of priests, and especially with House Silverwolf, it would be the purview of probably the Court of Rao, God of Justice, or the Hammer of Dwerdwin, which is the dwarven god that the Silverwolves revered. Surely one of them had a high-level priest whose job it was to make sure that if the king died, to cast Raised Dead so he could keep doing his job. If there's a cover-up, she's convinced that's what they're covering up, and she would support that. But she doesn't know why a spell like that might fail.
Mm-hmm.
If it was her job, it wouldn't fail, because she's a competent spellcaster.
Yeah.
She just doesn't have that specific kind of knowledge.
Both because Seeker is interested and also because he's trying to get her off his back while he learns some spells.
Mm-hmm.
Seeker assures her that the king is dead. He knows for a fact. And because of that, that means that it's due to her expertise, somebody wanted to keep him that way. And he's very interested to find out why that would be.
She wants to know how you know this for a fact.
And I'll tell her.
You tell her the whole sordid story?
I mean, yeah, I'll tell her the story, and I'll tell her also that there was a drow breaking into the crypt under one of the other claimants to the throne's desires,
Mm-hmm.
and that we tried to keep him from killing some palace guards, but he didn't. And also that the palace guards were in the middle of standing down because they were convinced that the king was dead and they shouldn't have been there.
Do you tell her that you were there at the behest of Sigurd Tensails?
No.
Okay.